Hey guys, I want to take a second to talk about Murder Minute, which is a new true crime app that delivers chilling true crime stories straight to your mobile device. So every day there's a new story that investigates a gruesome act of America's worst serial killers. You get to explore into the minds of psychopaths and murderers. That might sound dark, but I actually find this completely fascinating. It's your daily dose of true crime creepiness delivered straight to your mobile device through the Murder Minute app. So for example, you can learn what kind of trophies Ted Bundy collected, where he kept them, why he could smile all the time, and you can become a true crime expert with actual facts about well-known and lesser-known serial killers. I'm kind of into this. It's like, why did they call David Parker Ray the Toy Box Killer? And you can learn what goes into the psychology of a serial killer, which is huge today. So get the ins and outs of police investigation practices and what makes a cold case cold. So you sign up, it's easy and fun, and the design is simple and easy to use. It looks just like a chat log and keeps your ears free to listen for people creeping up behind you. You know, like your boss or a murderer. To get started, find and download Murder Minute from the App Store or visit murderminute.com. That's MurderMinute.com to get your daily dose of true crime creepiness delivered straight to your mobile device.
And I actually think there's a Neil Gaiman college speech that he gave, like a kind of like, you're graduating, here's your college speech. Mm-hmm. And he also gave the advice of fake it till you make it. So even Neil Gaiman does this. So I'm just telling you.
Welcome to Persister with Candace Lowry. I am Candace Lowry. What is a persister? A persister is a little play on words of nevertheless she persisted, but also a woman who has truly broken through that glass ceiling and has really forged a path and a name for herself in whatever business she's in. Persister with Candace Lowry is a CastBox original produced alongside Studio 71. CastBox is the fastest growing, highest rated podcast app on both iOS and Android, where you can find all of your favorite podcasts. You can listen to Persister with Candace Lowry wherever you get your podcasts, but I hope you'll give CastBox a shot because I think it's the best. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Persister with Candace Lowry. I am Candace Lowry and I have Erin La Rosa here today.
I'm Erin La Rosa.
Yeah. Did you plan this whole color palette?
Like, did I intentionally put on this sweater today?
Well, the sweater, the hair, and the LaCroix right now.
Oh, wow.
It's like,
I didn't realize that you know what?
I'm like, this is a beautiful sunset right now.
I did, actually. I just wanted you to be aesthetically happy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm fulfilling that.
I saw that and I was like, did she plan this?
Gosh.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited.
happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you to be here. So you are an author of multiple books.
That's true.
Did you just write a play?
I just wrote a play.
Okay, wrote a play. You used to be the big boss when I was a little kid at BuzzFeed.
When you were my little lamb chop at BuzzFeed.
Fellow.
Yeah. I was at BuzzFeed for 5 years. I was editorial director when I left on the West Coast. And I oversaw some video and editorial departments there. And yeah, you were there too. It was so great.
And I'm excited to get into that. And also, right now, you're a manager at Netflix.
Yeah, so I'm a manager in the editorial department at Netflix. It's really fun.
Yeah.
I oversee these channels at Netflix Film on Twitter and Instagram, so I get to talk about movies all day.
So follow Netflix Film.
Hashtag follow me. Hashtag, yeah, it's great.
So every time I start an interview, I just ask a fun question.
Oh, great.
That pertains
Love
to...
fun questions.
But I am interested because I am on Netflix all day, and a lot of people are. What do you think is the most underrated show or movie on there?
Oh, yes. Okay, so I love keeping TV on in the background while I'm working. And so one show that I just put on because it kept getting served to me was The Curious Creations of Christine McConnell, which is sort of like Halloween themed. When you look at the thumbnail, it's like, you know, this woman, she's making a cookie or whatever. And I was like, I'll just put that on in the background. No big deal. And I'm watching it and I'm listening to it. And it is like the strangest, most delightful show I've ever seen in my life. It's like a mix of Pee Wee Herman meets like some kind of Great British Bake Off kind of thing. But there are Muppet characters. There's a whole storyline, and she lives in kind of like a haunted, spooky house. There's a raccoon named Rose who she's brought back from the dead and has like a fork for a hand.
What?
And is like a sexually promiscuous raccoon.
So it's not for kids?
No, I would say it's not for kids. There's like a whole storyline about how the raccoon is like having a lot of sex with a garden gnome who lives next door.
Oh my God.
So it's only 6 episodes. I think they're 30 minutes each, but it's like pure joy.
Okay, because I keep seeing it pop up, and I'm like, is this like
a baking show or something, right?
Like a Barefoot Contessa dark.
It is so fabulous and strange, and I've honestly never seen anything like it.
Really?
And it is a delight.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch that because it keeps showing up, and I'm like, should I watch this?
I love it.
But I've been obsessed with Great British Bake Off.
I was watching it last night with the two new hosts.
They're not bad.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You know, there's this show. It's like an older comedy show called The Mighty Boosh.
Yes.
Okay,
and
so
I was
that
like,
guy is from The Mighty
Boosh. How is he going to do on this? And he's great.
He's great.
He's
you know
so
what? He's
cute.
great. I'm still a little bit like harumph about the fact that my old faves aren't there. But yeah, they're doing good. They're trying really hard. I miss Mary Berry too. Actually, I was just at a Halloween party where there was a guy and a girl dressed as Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry.
Really?
It was great.
Oh my God.
Brought back a lot of warm feelings.
Soggy bottoms.
Soggy bottoms.
Yeah, because I
don't want those.
So I'm trying to do a video where I try to do Great British Bake Off recipes. And I'm like,
how's it going?
I haven't started. I'm trying to get the right recipes, and I'm like, I'm worried here that I'm going to miserably fail, because once I start seeing the steps, and it's like, I just picture Paul Hollywood just staring me down.
Yeah, he's intense.
Yeah.
He's intense. It feels like you shouldn't do any of his recipes. Or maybe you should for the comic
bread.
factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, his bread is going to be tough. God. Like trying out a pastry with the like folding and
shoe.
Yes.
I learned so much from that show.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, we have talked about that. So I gotta talk about you.
Okay, cool.
All right. So you went to Emerson.
Yeah, I went to Emerson for undergrad.
Yeah.
And I feel like this will set up maybe a lot of how I approach life, which is at Emerson, I actually started as a film major.
Okay.
And I was a film major for about a week. And I was like, oh, I don't want to learn all the technical stuff of running a camera. I just want to do writing. So then I decided to major in TV video at Emerson, which is sort of like they do a lot of TV writing classes. But I was like, that's not enough writing. So I'm also going to double major in writing, literature, and publishing. So I was a double major. And then I was also like, well, maybe I need like a journalism minor to get even more writing in there.
My God.
So I was a double major with a journalism minor, and I did it all in 4 years.
I was about to say, did you graduate in 4 years?
I did, but I just really worked hard. And but this is part of my problem, is that I've been attracted and interested in so many different things that means that I've never had like a totally clear focus of what my life should be.
Right. But I feel like that's part of you being creative too.
Yeah. I mean, it's ultimately led, all of those things have led to all of the different jobs I've had. But I haven't had like a super straight path of like, oh, I've written 2 books and I've written a play, but it's not like I knew like, oh, I only want to write books, or I only even my writing is all over the place in terms of what I like to write.
You started more like entertainment writing, right?
Yeah, so I was when I graduated from Emerson, I had a job. My first job out of college was at Random House. And I was like, this is my life. I'm going to be a book editor. And then like 6 months in, I was like, I can't be a book editor.
And then reality.
This is ridiculous. It's like I'm getting paid. I think at the time I was getting paid $35,000 a year, and that was like in New York. And I was like, there's no way I will ever be able to live in this city and not like have my parents helping me with my rent.
Yeah.
And so I decided that I don't know why this seemed like a great idea. I was like, oh yeah, I'll go to grad school for writing. I'll just buy myself some time.
Yeah.
And so I ended up coming out to LA, to USC.
Okay.
And majoring in writing there. But, you know, I got a scholarship, and they paid me to teach there. So I got my tuition covered, and I also got like a salary.
Right.
And if you ever want to go to grad school, you should always make sure that they pay for grad school. Never, ever pay for grad school if you're going into a creative grad program. That's like something a teacher from my undergrad at Emerson taught me. You can always ask for money. Always tell them that other schools are trying to give you money. So at USC, I emailed a person there, and I was like, I've got offers from 2 other schools. What can you offer me?
So did they offer you money and then you apply for a job there, or it was
no
joint?
Part of the money was they were like, okay, we'll pay for your tuition, and but you have to teach for us. So I had to teach undergraduate writing, and so that's where the stipend came in of like, and here's a salary that we'll give you, but it wasn't a lot. So then I was like, okay, I've got to make a little more money, which is when I started freelance writing. And when I was freelance writing, I wrote for anything that like $5 an article, no problem, I'll do it. I was writing for vegan websites. I was writing for a lot of like random celebrity websites, to your point. But I ended up really loving writing online because that instant gratification of being like, oh, I published something and people are commenting on it. And even if they're terrible comments, I'm still
getting noticed.
Getting noticed. Wow, this is great. So... And, at that time, too, because, as I said, my interests are all over the place and I'm kind of a curious person, I was getting into comedy. So I was taking classes at UCB, which is like a very big trope in LA. Everyone takes a class at UCB.
I know, people are like, come to my show. I'm like,
that's
how
right.
many shows are there?
How many shows are there? There are a lot of shows.
They're good.
Every night. They're great shows.
Yeah.
But I met a friend there, a good friend of mine named Allie Horde, who is now like a comedic writer as well, but she was writing for Funny or Die at the time, and she was like, do you also want to write for Funny or Die? And I was, like, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was like one of my first big freelance writing jobs, was writing for them.
I feel like they're like the OG online comedy video website.
Absolutely.
Almost,
Yeah. And, when I was writing there, this was years ago, and they were really big. It was one of those things where like celebrities all wanted to be in their videos, and I got to like write some videos with Allie and also wrote for their pictures and words section. And I was just like, this is great. This is great.
So was this all while you were at USC still?
Yeah, this was all while at USC. So
did you have time to do other things?
I did, but I think one of my secret superpowers is time management, and I've gotten really good at that.
How do you do that?
So
I am such a procrastinator to the point where I feel like anyone I work for is afraid that I had a huge deck for FX, and like 2 days before they're like, where is it? And I'm like, it's not ready. And they're like, this is bad. But I get it done. It's weird.
Everyone has their method. So, I'm not, if that works for you, you should stick to it. If, waiting until the last minute and being under the gun like that, that might drive you. For me, I think a huge thing that has helped me is that I became a morning person. And I say became because I used to be a total insomniac, and I would just be, staring at the ceiling and turning on the TV and figuring out. But when I was in grad school, I really did have to focus because I had to write my thesis. And so the only time where I felt like I could actually focus was really early in the morning. So I started getting up at 6 a.m. every day. And from 6 to 8, that was my time to work on my thesis. But it took me probably a month to actually feel like, oh, I can wake up at 6 and I don't feel like going back to bed. I'm wide awake. And then after I got over that hump, it was just so easy. And
Yeah.
I still do that to this day. I get up at 6 and I write.
And I'm jealous of people that do that, and I want to know, are you like cold turkey, like we got to set our alarm at 6 starting
I eased
now?
into it. Like
7
little
to
half-hour
6:45.
increments.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just have to, I think, be kind to yourself and know, like, okay, it's not going to be great the first week or the second week or the third week, but there will come a week where I will wake up and I'll feel fine and it'll be fine. But it's like practicing. It's like a muscle.
Yeah. I want to be like that cool person that's able to watch the news and sip some coffee in the morning and not just fly out the door.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. You have to make time where you can is kind of it. And maybe you're more of a night person and maybe that's when you carve out your time. But for me, it was sort of like, I know that in the morning no one will disturb me and it'll be just like the world is quiet. And that's kind of what I need to focus.
So this is a random question that I was thinking about. When you taught kids in school, makes you sound like a kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
When you were a guest professor, were there some really bad students?
You know it, girl. There were really bad students.
What do you do? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder when I would turn in papers, I'm like, I wonder if they're just reading this being like, this girl did not even try or something.
Yeah. So I had all manner of bad students. I had students who plagiarized. I had students who, and I caught them.
Yeah, did you do it software or you were like, this is clearly not you?
It would be like, a student who, was incorrectly using commas throughout and not using the correct words, like maybe using antidote instead of anecdote. And then all of a sudden there would be a paragraph that was just like, beautifully written and very eloquent, and I'd be like, and I would take that paragraph and paste it into Google and be like, oh, this is from Wikipedia, which really deeply offended me that they would steal something from Wikipedia. At least go into a book.
Yeah, out of everything. That's just lazy.
But yeah, I feel like my method and my mode at that time was, because also I was really young. I was I think I was 24 teaching 18-year-olds. And I think they knew how young I was. And so my method was that I would dress and act really severe for the first month. So I would put my hair up in a really tight bun. I always wore my glasses. I wore black to every class. And I would be dead quiet. And as they all filed in.
They're like, oh my God, you have Professor La Rosa.
Yeah. But you know what? I just had this thing of I just have to be really strict with them in the first place, and then I can ease out of it and they'll be so terrified that they'll be good. And so for the most part that worked, honestly. And by the end of the class I was my normal self.
Yeah.
And everything was great. But I just had to set the tone of because, as a woman too, you are judged in so many ways, and there are actually studies about, female professors are judged way harsher than male professors in surveys and end of year feedback. So they actually, a lot of departments don't use that feedback anymore because they know it's gender biased. And people have this gender bias without even knowing it. So for me, I was just like, I gotta fix this.
Yeah.
I gotta be, and I don't think a male colleague of mine would have had to do the same things, but I felt like I had to.
No, yeah, and then they're kind of instead of being like, oh, she's tough, it's like, oh, she's a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's some guy professors who was like, man, this dude's rough. And then I guess if a girl acted the same way, I'd be like, she's a bitch.
It's really tough. It's really tough.
But it kind of sounds like, though, it almost set you up to be a manager, kind of.
And I actually used that when I had my first manager job, which was when I got my first full-time writing job at E, which was before BuzzFeed. And what I said was I taught classes, so I'm super organized and, I can manage people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that sold it, but I did get the job. And I ended up, managing writers when I was at E. And then I felt like that really helped me when I went to BuzzFeed in terms of, because, I think, was that your first job out of college?
Yeah.
So
I was gonna poop my pants every day. I was so scared.
So you were not alone. It felt like a lot, most of the people we worked with were fresh out of college.
Yeah.
For me, it was not my first job, But I actually used that kind of lesson plan format and like a lot of my teaching games in our brainstorms. I don't know if you remember that, but I would have these like elaborate brainstorms with like cue cards and games. We would write on the board.
I took them with me. I was like, these are like the best games ever.
Yeah, and I just kind of pulled that from my experience teaching, because I would remember a glazed classroom with their eyes, everyone's eyes being glazed, and I never wanted that to happen. So I quickly learned through teaching like how to keep people engaged, and I felt like that worked in brainstorms, and I felt like because of that, a lot of people at BuzzFeed ended up copying those brainstorming methods, because they just worked and people stayed awake during them.
Yeah. No, I feel like that helped. Because it was my first job, I feel like it helped me be more creative in writing and what I was doing. And then when I went to my next job, people were like, what is this? Like a magic thing? I'm like, a brainstorm?
Yeah.
And so
because a lot of them can be boring, and you figure that out when you go to other companies, right? It's like when you get that experience of like, oh, not every company is creative like this or whatever, you really get that perspective.
And I want to talk more on, not only moving to BuzzFeed, but also being at, I guess, what was a startup when you were there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I started at BuzzFeed, there were 5 employees. And I remember telling my parents, like, oh, I'm going to work at this website called BuzzFeed. And my dad kept calling it the Feed Buzz. And a lot of my friends in LA and New York who maybe should have known about it, like no one knew about it, and it was sort of like a huge risk that I left this like very massive company to go to BuzzFeed, and I thought like, oh wow, I just left like my 401k and I left all this like adult stuff that I need, and now I'm going to this startup where who knows if it's gonna fold. And a lot of people at told me, they were like, okay, well when it folds you can come back. And so, but
But it didn't.
It didn't. And I really felt like I saw the potential of what BuzzFeed could be beyond like the cute cat stuff, which I also, obviously we love cats. But yeah, we were working out of basically a shared workspace. So we had one desk, not much bigger than this, that we all sat at. And there were other people at other companies working around us, including this guy who brought in his like very massive dog every day, who would come over and just like drool in our laps. And I remember thinking, I was like, what have I done? Like, I'm at this like weird building and I don't know if this is going to work out for me.
Right.
But it just kept growing. And I think taking risks are really important, and taking the risk to go to a startup is a great risk to take, because the best case scenario is it turns into something like BuzzFeed did.
Right, right.
And you can be part of something from the ground up and grow really quickly, which I did.
And I want to go into that more, but first take a real quick break.
Okay.
So we'll be right back. All right, everybody. I want to talk about Zola. Zola, the wedding company that will do anything for love, is reinventing the wedding planning and registry experience to make the happiest moment in couples' lives even happier. From engagements to weddings and to decorating your first home, Zola is there combining compassionate customer service with modern tools and technology, all in the service of love. Now, I'm not married yet, but hopefully one day I will be. And I'm so excited to be able to explore these kind of registry websites and everything, just so I can be prepared and make my wedding as easy as possible. So, speaking of easy, Zola is the easiest way to plan your wedding and register. I'm just saying, I have a lot of stressed out friends that are getting married right now that kind of need this. So basically, you join over 500,000 couples who've used Zola. It takes the stress out of wedding planning with free wedding websites, your dream wedding registry, affordable save the dates and invitations, and easy-to-use planning tools. You can conveniently manage everything online and in one place, which saves so much time for couples and actually can probably help the stress of getting married. So you start with a free wedding website, which is super easy and takes just a few minutes to set up. And you get over 100 beautiful wedding website designs to choose from that fit any couple style and every type of wedding. Zola makes it easy to personalize your favorite design with all your wedding details. You can add photos, stories about how you two met, travel and accommodation information, and even recommend things to do for your guests while they're in town for your wedding. An FAQ section helps address those awkward questions like, can I bring my kids? Or do I actually have a +1? You can put your Zola registry on your wedding website so guests can get all the details they need and buy your wedding gift in one convenient and beautiful place. So you have your website, and now you're going to build your dream registry on Zola. Zola makes registering for newlywed life so easy. The Zola store has the widest selection of gifts at all different types of price points. There's something for every guest to give, so nobody has an excuse. Guests love free shipping and returns, price matching, and more. Over 500 top brands from OXO and Cuisinart to Sonos and Airbnb. You can also create a fund for your honeymoon, future home, new puppy, or kitten, or anything you want. Plus, register for gift cards to your favorite brands like Delta, Southwest, Hulu, Home Depot, and more. They also have the best completion discount, 20% off remaining gifts on your registry, starting right after your big day. To start your free wedding website and also get $50 off your registry on Zola, go to zola.com/persister. That's ZOLA.com/PERSISTER. Once again, that's zola.com/persister. PERSISTER. So I want to talk about Stitch Fix real quick. This has actually been wonderful for me because I'm about to move to Seattle, which is a totally different climate. So I was super excited to use Stitch Fix to help me kind of get that Pacific Northwest look. So basically, Stitch Fix is an online personal styling service that finds and delivers clothes, shoes, and accessories to fit your body, budget, and lifestyle. Emphasis on the budget because this is very important to me. Just go to stitchfix.com/persister and tell them your sizes, what styles you like, and how much you want to spend on each item. Then you'll be paired with your very own personal stylist who will handpick 5 items to send right to your door. Then you try them on, pay for only what you love, and return the rest. Shipping, exchanges, and returns are always free. And there's no subscription required. You can sign up to receive scheduled shipments or just get your fix whenever you want. Stitch Fix's styling fee is only $20, which is applied toward anything you keep from your shipment. Get started now at stitchfix.com/persister, and you'll get an extra 25% off when you keep all 5 items in your box. That's stitchfix.com/persister to get started today. stitchfix.com/persister. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Persister. Erin is here with me.
Still here. Can't get rid of me.
Still sunset aura here. But yeah, we were just talking about making this leap from a huge company that you have this guaranteed stability
security,
almost. Yeah, and kind of making this jump. And so, that was so small. So what was that moment where you were like, I need to take this and try it and do it?
Yeah, so I remember it really clearly, which was, I was at E! I had been there for a year, and I was their top performing writer because I, of course, looked at all the data. Mm-hmm. And I went to my boss, and at that point, I was making $50,000 a year at E! Mm-hmm. Which was like more money than I had ever made. And I was like, I am rich. And I was so excited. I was like, I can pay my rent. Yeah. This is great. But I wanted more money. And so I went to my boss and I said to him, I was like, I'm in this spot where I can pay my rent, but I'm not saving anything. And some months I'm only like skating by, and I would love, a $10,000 increase. And I was like, I feel like I've earned it. Mm-hmm. And I said, if I don't get that, I'm going to have to get a second job, and I don't want to have to do that. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, without missing a beat, he was like, I can't give you a raise at this time because we're corporate and we don't give raises until like year 2. He was like, but I'll help you get a second job. And
I'm so sorry.
I know your little face
insane.
just did what my face did. And so I knew at that moment, I was like, I do not want to work for this person who clearly doesn't want to advocate for me.
Yeah.
And who would suggest that it's okay for me to have a second job on top of my very busy full-time job. So I knew I had to get out of there. And, sometimes timing really works out. But a friend of mine emailed and told me that BuzzFeed was opening an office in LA. And I had actually already applied for a job at BuzzFeed before it had an LA office. I really wanted to work there. So I think one thing to know is that, like, I just really believed in that company and what they were doing. And I thought it was so cool, like, very early on. But, I applied and I went to one interview with a guy named Scott Lamb, who I love. He's still at BuzzFeed. And we had a great and weird conversation. It was not like any interview I had ever done. He was asking me a lot about just like what I like to do for fun. And I was like, that's really weird that he's asking me these questions, but okay. And I just, I really wanted to work there, and I asked them for what I wanted, which was $60,000, and they matched it. And they were like, no problem, we'll give you 60. And I remember talking to my mom, and she was like, you should always go with a company that wants you to do well and wants you to succeed. And it felt like they wanted that for me.
Yeah.
And that really meant a lot. And it felt like that was who I wanted to be working for versus the guy who's telling me to get a second job.
I cannot believe that.
Oh, yeah, that happened. That's real.
It still blows my mind.
I know. The funny thing is that when I told E I was leaving, they then offered to match the $60K.
Oh, no. Sorry.
It's too late.
Yeah. No,
it's too late. But yeah, so I think you have to be willing to ask for what you need and want. And if a company or an employer isn't willing to give that to you, then you shouldn't work for them. And you need to find a way out.
It is another thing, too. I feel like being a girl, too, I've been very timid about talking about that and asking about that. And both my parents grew up in business, and they were like, you need to do you and focus on yourself. And like, if you should be comfortable to ask. And like, and then I think like, oh, if I were my dad, he would have no problem.
I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind, and I've tried to tell anyone I've managed this, but, the worst case scenario is that they say no, and then you know what you have to do, which is like you have to find another job. Yeah. And so that's the worst case, and that's not a big deal, really. Like, out of all of the scary things that can happen, no one will ever fire you for asking for more money.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Right?
I feel like your performance review, you asked for money. So.
Yeah. And I've asked for money at every job I've ever been in every single year. Even if I feel like I'm being a little overpaid or something, I'll be like, hey, I would like to ask for this much money.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've gotten it and sometimes I haven't, and that's okay. But I always ask.
Yeah, and I feel like the more times you do it, the easier it gets, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not in a, like, it's so easy, but in, like, a,
Yeah, it's not easy, It's like, it is scary to be vulnerable in that way, but at the end of the day, again, the worst case scenario is they say no.
Yeah.
No biggie.
No problem.
Yeah, no problem. I'll go find another job.
Yeah.
No problem.
So because you were a writer, then the editor, then the deputy editor, right? Yeah. Like, trying to remember.
Yeah, I started as a staff writer.
Yeah.
And then, became a manager and editorial director when I left. But I went from a very purely creative role into managing creative people, pretty much.
Yeah, I know that sometimes when you're a creative person, it can be a little, not nerve-wracking, but sometimes when people are like, well, I still want to be creative, but I want to move up and I want to be a manager, do you feel like you still have the ability to be creative?
Yeah, you have to really find ways into it, though. You have to work at it. So when I was managing people, the way that I would be creative was when I was thinking about strategy for the teams or how to give feedback to someone. So you kind of channel your creative energy elsewhere. But also for me, what that meant was like, okay, I also have to have a different creative outlet, which is actually when I started really getting into book writing, because I was like, if I'm not writing at this job, I still need to be writing. Yeah.
Oh my God. I've asked this like multiple times to people. How do you write a book? Like, I don't know how you can get that many pages. It just blows my mind. Do you just do kind of a little bit at a time? Or...
Well, for me, for both of my books, my first book, I was approached to write it, so I didn't pitch it, but I had a 6-month deadline, so I had to write it in 6 months.
Okay.
And the second book was also nonfiction. They're both nonfiction books, so I sold it on a proposal, which is usually 2 chapters and an outline. And they also gave me 6 months. So for both of my books, I had 6 months.
Can you negotiate?
You can. You definitely can. And so what they had asked me for both of them was like, how much research time do you need? And for the first one, what did I know? It was my first book. So I was like, 6 months, no problem.
Yeah.
And I was able to do it, but I was writing constantly. And so that was the trade-off. But then when the second book came around, I was like, well, I did it in 6 months the first time, so let's just do it again.
Here we go.
And then I did it. But for fiction, something like fiction, that's gonna take more time. You're gonna have to be editing a lot and re-editing, and a lot of writing is rewriting. So you really just have to get used to like your first draft is gonna be terrible,
trash,
like total trash. You're gonna reread it and you're gonna be like,
what happened?
Like, why is this sentence cut off in the middle? And like, what was I talking about? And you just have to be okay with that and know that the first draft you write is not going to be the draft you get published. That's fine.
Right.
But how do you do it? I don't know. You just have to.
You just do.
You just do it. Yeah. I mean, you can use time on, like, bring your computer to work and use your lunch break to write. Like, get up early in the morning like I did. Like, you figure it out.
Yeah.
Deadlines help, I think.
Yeah,
for
that
me.
pressure, I guess. But so I feel like, you're at a place like BuzzFeed that's so explosive. I mean, it kind of laid the pipeline for media and video merging together and, these viral videos. So how did it go? Did like Netflix, I don't know if you're allowed to say this, if Netflix approached you, or, was it hard to leave someplace that you've basically seen grow from the ground up?
Yeah, so I had been at BuzzFeed for 5 years, so it was a huge chunk of my life, and it was like, the longest I had ever been at any job. And for me, I think it had gotten to a point where I just wasn't feeling challenged anymore. And I felt like I had kind of like hit a ceiling in terms of where I could go within the company. And I still love BuzzFeed. I think it's a really great creative place. But I knew that I couldn't stay any longer because I wasn't doing the best work that I wanted to do. So what I did, a friend of mine told me, like, don't fixate on your next title, like what your job title will be. She said, just think about a company where you want to work. And similar to what you said earlier, like, I watch Netflix all the time and I love it. And it seemed like a really cool company.
Yeah.
And so I looked at Netflix, I looked at Disney, I looked at a few other companies, Apple, Facebook. And I just reached out to people who I thought might know people there, or to contacts I had. I had 2 friends who were working at Netflix and really loved it. So I just kind of put it on their radar. I'm looking for a new job. If you hear of anything, let me know. And you would be surprised how when you just let people know, when you become vulnerable and you let people know, like, I'm looking, do you know of anything? Can you help me? Like, people will help you, and they'll keep you in mind for things. So my friend was like, oh, there's this really cool part of the company that like does social media basically for movies. Like, would you be interested in that? And I was like, I've never worked in film in my life, but sure, like, I'll interview. And I did, and it was I don't know. I still don't know how I got the job. I think a lot of people at Netflix have imposter syndrome because you just feel like, I'm so lucky to be here.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way. I truly don't know why they gave me the job, but I love it, and I've been there for a little over a year now.
Yeah.
But it was hard. to leave BuzzFeed just because, you know, it's like a second family, your work family. You're there most of the time during the day.
Right.
So I was sad to leave people who I really love and know that I wouldn't be around them every day. But I felt like it was just something I really needed to do. And ultimately, I was really excited to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there is also that, like, leap of faith. But also, you know, looking back to see how far you've come to get to that point, too. And I remember when... because I was talking about you about possibly working at Netflix.
Yeah.
And then I was interviewed and we talked about the culture there. And I feel like Netflix has a very unique culture, but also it values its culture. Like it focuses on it. I remember being asked a lot of questions about that. And so when you're looking at people that you want to join your team, like what do you look for mostly?
Well, you know, I manage a team of freelance writers, so it's a little different because I'm not hiring any, like, full-time staff to Netflix. But I think, you know, all of my coworkers are really driven. They are comfortable talking about feedback and giving each other feedback and being open to feedback. You know, I feel like I'm surrounded by basically, like, people at the top of their game. So, you know... It just feels like you're really inundated with very talented, very smart people all the time. So, you know, I don't know what the secret sauce is for that, to be honest.
Yeah,
but
it's just the personality, I guess.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, it feels like a really great and exciting and energizing place to be every day when you go into work. Like, people are happy to be there.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be there. So, I don't know. It's fun. I was leaving work today and I got on a call with my husband, and he, you know, it's like every day the first question he asks is how was work, and I was like, it was really great. And that's like my answer most days. So
yeah, and people would like die to have that, you know, to just enjoy their jobs.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if people are interested in working at Netflix, it's sort of like, you know, read that culture deck. I think it's online and free to read. And if it feels like, you know, it's speaking to you, then that's definitely that, you know, and for me, like, I remember reading it and being like, this is exactly what I want to be part of. And it felt right for me and it felt good.
Yeah, and I think that was an emphasis that I got too, was just, you know, like, we're looking for a specific type of person, but just because you're not this person does not mean you're good at what you do, you know? And I think that, have you ever had a moment where you wanted to be a part of a company or somewhere so badly, but it wasn't the right fit?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm trying to think... well, I mean, you know, Disney was another company where I looked when I was looking to leave BuzzFeed, and I reached out a couple of times, and actually, it's all coming back to me now because I've had so many jobs in my life. Disney had this really great interactive website that it had years ago that has since folded. But before I got my job at E, I was applying at Disney, and I was applying there for like 6 months, and it was just a really long process of hiring. And I was so drawn to it because it just seemed like such a great creative opportunity. They had these cool offices in Burbank where we are right now, where they had like a bar in there, and they had like a room called the Moon Room where you could go and nap.
What?
And I was like, what is this place? It felt very techy.
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed when I didn't get the job. And I just remember feeling like, what did I do wrong? You know, you always kind of blame yourself. And the truth is, to your point, like, most companies are looking for something very specific. And just because you're not that specific thing doesn't reflect badly on you. It's just they have something in mind.
Right.
And, you know, as a writer, that rejection happens all the time. And, like, probably one of the more devastating rejections I had was that when I was really trying to write fiction, I had gotten very far with a publisher where I had signed a book contract to kind of ghostwrite for this author. And I wrote, I think, the first 80 pages of the book, and we kept rewriting, and I could tell that the tone just wasn't hitting where she wanted me to go. And ultimately, they let me go from the book contract, and she ended up getting a new author, and the book got published. But I was devastated for months. I was just like, oh my God, I'm not a writer. Like, I don't deserve writing. Why did I pursue this in the first place? And it's fine. Ultimately, it's like you will get rejected all the time. If you want to be in this world, you will get rejected all the time.
Don't expect to get everything.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. There was a time in my life, especially when I was first starting out, where I was like, of course I'll get every job. Of course I will. And you won't. And it's okay.
Yeah, I've been rejected before.
Everyone has.
But yeah, I think just to, wrap it up and kind of conclude there, for the young girl that wants to work at a place like Netflix eventually, or wants to see themselves being like a boss lady at a place like BuzzFeed or Netflix, what would you say to them? I know that's a big question, but...
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's, like, one piece of advice. I mean, I feel like this is like a tried and true trope, but fake it till you make it is really important. And I actually think there's a Neil Gaiman college speech that he gave, like a kind of like, you're graduating, here's your college speech. And he also gave the advice of fake it till you make it. So even Neil Gaiman does this. So I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I think that it's that issue of just be confident and, you're badass, and I feel like even when you were talking to Alex, like, even when I was a fellow, I was like, Erin's so cool. Like, she's like a boss-ass bitch. And like,
well, I think what you were picking up on is like, but again, I think this does go back to fake it till you make it, because if you have a strong opinion, it may not even be the right one, but you have to have an opinion. And so often I would say things where, looking back, I was like, that probably wasn't the right thing to say, but I was the most confident person in the room, and I said it, and so we did it, and we tried it, and maybe it failed, but someone had to. And so it's sort of like, just be the person who knows what they're talking about, and that will get you really far.
Yeah.
Even if you feel terrified in the moment.
Just look like you're...
It helps,
it works.
And I think being, like... People want to be around the person who knows what they're talking about, and you want to be inspired by that person. You want to be led by that person. And so fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
It works.
It's tried and true.
I'm telling you.
Well, I'm very happy that you were able to come in at night.
We told people to lie tonight. Yes. What else did we do? We talked about cats a little bit.
Yes. Lie cats.
We'll figure out the third one.
Don't get a second job.
Don't get a second job. Get a new boss.
Yes. And always find a creative outlet.
Yes.
Make one
even
for
if
yourself.
It means getting up at 6 a.m.
Yeah. But so where can people find you?
So people can find me online at Side of Ginger, because I have red hair.
Yeah.
So of course I did that.
You've written about gingers.
I've written about redheads. One of my books about redheads. Yeah, and I'm excited to connect with people. Reach out.
Yeah, reach out.
Me.
Wave
at me. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And this is great.
Thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Persister. And I hope you learned a lot. I learned a lot. It's always helpful to just bring people in across the industry and learn more. And I hope you guys got inspired. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.